Janaranjana Yashodanandana Prajanaranjana Jana Vallabha Giri Vardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Gopi Jana Vallabha Nandana Prajanaranjana Srimad Bhagavatam ki Go Premanandi. Oh gloriously assembled devotees. Oh gloriously assembled devotees. Oh gloriously assembled devotees. Oh glorious to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Narayanam namaskritya naram cheva narottamam devyam saraswatim vyasam tato jayam udirayat. Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya. 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 Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, canto 3. Srimad Bhagavatam, canto 3, chapter 29, chapter entitled Explanation of Devotional Service. Text number 35. Yayorikatarineva Purusha Purusham Vrajet Bhakti Yogascha Yogascha Mayamana Vyudirita Yayore Katareneva Purusha Purusham Vrajet Bhakti Yogascha Yogascha
Bhakti yogasya yogasya.
Maya mana vyudirita.
Maya mana vyudirita.
Yayor ekatareneva.
Yayor ekatareneva.
Purusham Vrajet.
Purusham prajet.
Bhakti yogasya yogasya.
Bhakti yogasya yogasya.
Maya mana vyudirita.
Maya mana vyudirita.
Yayor ekatareneva.
Yayor ekatareneva.
Purusham vrajet.
Purusham prajet.
Bhakti yogasya yogasya.
Maya mana vyudirita. Yayor ekatareneva. Purusham prajet.
Bhakti yogasya yogasya.
Bhakti yogasya yogasya.
Maya mana vyudirita.
Maya mana vyudirita.
Yayor ekatareneva.
Yayor ekatareneva.
Purusham
Purusham prajet.
Bhakti yogasya yogasya.
Bhakti yogasya yogasya.
Maya mana vyudirita.
Maya mana vyudirita.
Yayor ekatareneva.
Yayor ekatareneva.
Purusham prajet.
Purusham prajet.
Bhakti yogasya yogasya.
Bhakti yogasya yogasya.
Maya mana vyudirita.
Maya mana vyudirita.
Yayor ekatareneva.
Yayor ekatareneva.
Purusham prajet.
Purusham prajet.
Bhakti yogasya yogasya.
Bhakti yogasya yogasya.
Maya mana vyudirita.
Maya mana vyudirita.
Yayor ekatareneva.
Yayor ekatareneva.
Purusham prajet.
Purusham prajet.
Mataji's.
Bhakti yogasya yogasya. Maya mana vyudirita. Yayor ekatareneva. Purusham prajet.
Bhakti yogasya yogasya.
Bhakti yogasya yogasya.
Maya mana vyudirita.
Maya mana vyudirita.
Yayor ekatareneva.
Yayor ekatareneva.
Purusham
prajet.
Bhakti Yoga,
Bhakti yoga.
devotional service.
Devotional service.
Cha
Cha.
and
And
Yoga,
yoga.
mystic yoga.
Mystic yoga.
Cha
Cha.
also.
Also.
Maya
Maya.
by me.
By me.
Manavi,
Manavi.
the daughter of Manu.
O daughter of Manu.
Udirita,
Udirita.
described.
Described.
Yayo,
Yayo.
of which two?
Of which two.
Ekatarena,
Ekaterina.
by either one.
By either one.
Eva,
Eva.
alone.
Alone.
Purusha,
Purusha.
a person.
A person.
Purusham,
Purusham.
the Supreme Person.
The Supreme Person.
Brajet,
Prajet.
can achieve.
Can achieve.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. My dear mother, O daughter of Manu, a devotee who applies the science of devotional service and mystic yoga in this way can achieve the abode of the Supreme Person simply by that devotional service. Translation responsibly. My dear mother,
My dear mother,
O daughter of Manu,
O daughter of Manu,
a devotee who applies the science of devotional service
A devotee who applies the science of devotional service
and mystic yoga in this way
and mystic yoga in this way
can achieve the abode of the Supreme Person
can achieve the abode of the Supreme Person
simply by that devotional service.
simply by that devotional service.
Report. Here in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Kapila Dev perfectly explains that the mystic yoga system, consisting of 8 different kinds of yoga activities, has to be performed with the aim of coming to the perfectional stage of bhakti yoga. It is not acceptable for one to be satisfied simply by practicing the sitting postures and thinking himself complete. By meditation, one must attain the stage of devotional service. As previously described, a yogi is advised to meditate on the form of Lord Vishnu from point to point, from the ankles to the legs, to the knees, to the thighs, to the chest, to the neck, and in this way gradually up to the face and then to the ornaments. There is no question of impersonal meditation. When by meditation on the Supreme Personality of Godhead in all detail, one comes to the point of love of God, that is the point of bhakti yoga, and at that point he must actually render service to the Supreme Lord out of transcendental love and stop playing with the paraphernalia. Anyone who practices yoga and comes to the point of devotional service can attain the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his transcendental abode. Here it is clearly stated, Purusha, Purusham Vrajet. The Purusha, the living entity, goes to the Supreme Person, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the living entity are qualitatively one, both are defined as Purusha. The quality of Purusha exists both in the Supreme Lord and the living entity. Purusha means enjoyer. The spirit of enjoyment is present both in the living entity and in the Supreme Lord. The difference is that the quantity of enjoyment is not equal. The living entity cannot experience the same quantity of enjoyment as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. An analogy may be made with a rich man and a poor man. The propensity for enjoyment is present in both, but the poor man cannot enjoy in the same quantity as the rich man. When the poor man dovetails his desires with those of the rich man, however, and when there is cooperation between the poor man and the rich man, or between the big and small man, then the enjoyment is shared equally. That is like bhakti yoga. Purusha, Purusham, Brajet. When the living entity enters the kingdom of God and cooperates with the Supreme Lord by giving him enjoyment, he enjoys the same facility or the same amount of pleasure as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. On the other hand, when the living entity wants to enjoy by imitating the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his desire is called Maya, and it puts him into the material atmosphere. A living entity who wants to enjoy on his personal account and not cooperate with the Supreme Lord is engaged in materialistic life. As soon as he dovetails his enjoyment with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is engaged in spiritual life. An example may be cited here. The different limbs of the body cannot enjoy life independently. They must cooperate with the whole body and supply food to the stomach. In doing so, all the different parts of the body enjoy equally in cooperation with the whole body. That is the philosophy of Achincha, Beda, and Beda. Simultaneously, oneness and difference. The living entity cannot enjoy life in opposition to the Supreme Lord. He has to dovetail his activities with the Lord by practicing bhakti yoga. It is said herein that one can approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead by either the yoga process or the bhakti yoga process. This indicates that factually there is no difference between yoga and bhakti yoga because the target of both is Vishnu. In the modern age, however, a yoga process has been manufactured which aims at something void and impersonal. Actually, yoga meditation in the form of Lord Vishnu. Yoga means meditation on the form of Lord Vishnu. If the yoga practice is actually performed according to the standard direction, there is no difference between yoga and bhakti yoga. Omagyan timadandasya gyananjana shalakaya chakshurunmilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swa Padantikam Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindubhya Evacha Patitanam Avanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Hare. So, the Bhagavad Gita is called, in some way, sometimes it's called the Gita-upanishad. It's actually an Upanishad. An Upanishad means a portion of the Vedas which is within the, which division is? There's two divisions in the Vedas. Shruti and Smriti. Yeah, Smriti literally means, smarana, means remembrance. So the Smriti portion of the Vedas is like the histories, the narratives, the itihasas, the Puranas, like the Srimad Bhagavatam. The philosophy is there, but it's told within a story. That's called the Smriti portion of the Vedas. The Smriti portion of the Vedas says to come from the sages, the rishis. They speak, they remember, like Narada. You see the Bhagavatam, most of the Bhagavatam, great portion of the Bhagavatam is Narada speaking. So Narada remembers, either he was there, he saw the pastimes, or he heard it from someone, now he's repeating the pastime. That's the Purana. Purana means ancient, old. And then you have the Smriti, you have the Shruti. Shruti means those things which directly emanate from the breathing of the Lord. These portions of the Vedas, they come from the beginning of the creation. When the Lord creates the universe, they manifest. And they're generally philosophical by nature. Like the Gita. The Gita doesn't have a storyline within it. First chapter, there's some story, a little bit of story. But the rest of the Gita is philosophy. It describes the philosophical points of the Vedas. So they're described and discussed and elaborated upon. That's called the Shruti. Philosophical portion of the Vedas, emanating directly from the Lord. So the Upanishads, for example, we have the Ishopanishad, which is translated by Prabhupada in ISKCON. That's one of the 108 Upanishads. The Gita, the Bhagavad Gita, is also called Gita-upanishad, which means it's like the Upanishad. It's a philosophical portion of the Vedas. The Ishopanishad only has 18 verses or 19? 18? Yeah. And then there's invocation and like that. So there's only 18 verses, very small. Vedanta Sutra, actually, often you hear of Vedanta Sutra. It says that Vyasadeva compiled the Vedas, then he wrote everything in the Vedanta. The Vedanta Sutra is very small. It's a very terse work. There's not a lot in there. So it's all the Vedic philosophy, just in a few verses. And the Gita is like that. It's only 700 verses, not a big work, really, Bhagavad Gita. In Kali Yuga, people find it hard to even read the Bhagavad Gita. How many people have read it? Hands up, you read the Bhagavad Gita? And not everyone put their hand up. It's true. It's true. I was a devotee for a number. I was a brahmachari living in the ashram. I didn't read the Gita for a while. It took time to read the Bhagavad Gita. Yeah, so it's a long book for people in Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga, everyone just wants a short. Even Arjuna at the end of the Gita, because in the Bhagavad Gita you have 700 verses, but actually there was a lot more dialogue. In between verses, Baladev Vijabhushan and Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, they say, Krishna said this, Arjuna said that. There was more going on. It wasn't just, we're given the 700 verses. Yeah. But then when it gets to the end, in the 18th chapter, Krishna's described everything by chapter 17, actually. 18 is like a conclusive summary. Prabhupada says there's nothing fresh within the 18th chapter of the Gita. The 18th chapter is like a revision. Right? Nothing new that Krishna, he restates things. And then, at the end, then Arjuna says, okay, can you please summarize the whole thing? So Krishna says, Mamana bhava madbhakto madhyajin mam namaskuru. So he says 4 things. Right? Think of me, worship me, offer your homage unto me, become my devotee. 4 things. So it simplifies the whole thing. That's what people in Kali Yuga are like. Right? Can you give me just 4 things? Yeah? Why do I have to have 700? That's too much. Kali Yuga is like that. How long can children keep their attention span for in Kali Yuga? Are there any kids here? Huh? You don't know? I'll tell you. 11 minutes. Why 11 minutes? Because that's how long it is between 2 ads on television. That's when I was growing up. Right? That was the law. You had to have an ad every 11 minutes. You couldn't have it more than that. That was the law. But I think now, I think it's 7 minutes or 6 minutes. Right? So you guys can only concentrate for 6 minutes. Right? After 6 minutes, like... Of course, your devotee kids, you don't watch television, probably so much. You probably don't watch it so much. Yeah, you know TV at home, right? Do they watch telly? Or? No, they don't have telly. Yeah, so you don't watch it very much. No? So that's good. That means you have 11-minute span. You're better than the other kids. The other kids, 6 minutes. That's it. You see in class after 6 minutes, they all start looking around like that. They can't keep their span. So therefore, everyone in Kali Yuga is like that. They just want, give it to me quick. Tell me what it is. What's the point? What's the point? Just give it to me. So Krishna says, okay, to Arjuna, okay, 4 things. Right? Those 4 things come from 9 things. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dashanam, Sakyam, Atman, Nivedanam, which is from the 7th canto of the Bhagavatam. There's a point that we're getting to. The Bhagavatam, the 18,000 verses, is an elaboration on the 700 verses from the Gita. So whatever's in the Gita in 700 verses, then it fructifies into 18,000 verses in the Bhagavatam. So those 9 devotional links. Did I say 7 or 9?
7.
I said 9, yeah. So those 9... the 4 expand into the 9. And then Rupa Goswami took those 9 and then he expanded them to 64. So if you read Nectar of Devotion, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, there's 64 items of bhakti. So that comes from the 9, which comes from the 4. Right? So those 4, that's what we concentrate on. But then in the conversation, you go from verse 65 to 66, what does Arjuna say? Can't you give me just one thing? That's Kali Yuga. You just give me one thing. 4 things is too many things to remember. Like if I tell you, hey Gopal, remember these 4 things, right? And then he'll start going like that. Of course, these kids are intelligent, so they're sharp. They can retain things. But generally, one thing is enough for most people. And most people, you tell them one thing, they come back to you in a couple of minutes, they go, what was that? People in Kali Yuga are not very sharp. Memory is not good. So, Arjuna says, just give me one thing. So Krishna says, okay. Sarvadhamam parichacha. Just reject everything I just said. Prabhupada says in one lecture, actually, on the Gita, Prabhupada says, Krishna said, jnana, karma, yoga, gunas. He spoke on so many subject matters. And then at the end of all of that, then Krishna says, just reject it, forget it. Just forget the whole conversation we just had for the last hour, 700 verses. And now, mam ekam sharanam braja eka. One thing. Just give me one thing. Sharana, just take shelter of me. That's the whole Bhagavad Gita. Bhurujan Prabhu wrote a wonderful commentary on the Gita. Prabhupada told him to, actually. And he wrote that. It's called Surrender Unto Me. Have you read that book? Yeah. If you study Gita, you have to use that book to study, if you really want to understand the Gita. It elaborates on the Gita. Surrender unto me. That's the whole thing. You only have to remember that one line. If you remember that, you understand everything. Right? You've understood everything. If you understand that one line, we'll give you a Bhakti Shastri degree. Right? We'll also give you Bhakti Vaibhava and Bhakti Vedanta, and maybe Bhakti Sarvabhauma, which no one has in ISKCON yet. There's no one who has that degree yet, because it hasn't been taught yet in ISKCON. We still have to teach it. Right? But you can get there. If you understand that one line, that's the essence of everything. Surrender unto me. Like last night I was giving class in our course in the temple. And we told the story from Chaitanya Charitamrita. So Lord Chaitanya was going through South India, right? And then he met one Brahmana. And the Brahmana was illiterate. What does that mean, illiterate? What's that? No, not bogus. Illiterate. Illiterate. You should know. What is illiterate? You don't know that? Literate, you know literate? Literature? Literature? What does literature mean? Literature means books, knowledge. Right? Literature means books, like literature. Illiterate means someone who doesn't know how to read. Some people don't know how to read. Sometimes there might be kids at school. They're, what do they call that? Dyslexic, yeah. They sometimes read, like Mani Griva Prabhu at the farm. He's a little bit dyslexic. Sometimes it takes him time to read things. Like he reads, but he says the letters kind of bounce around. And sometimes the words join and stuff, so it's hard to... Some people, it's a condition. In Vedic culture, it's okay. Brahmanas have to read because they're Brahmanas. But, the Shudras, the Vaishyas, they don't necessarily need to read. So there's nothing wrong. If someone has that condition, there's nothing wrong. So Lord Chaitanya was travelling through South India, and then he met a Brahmana who didn't know how to read. Right? But his guru told him every day you have to read the whole Bhagavad Gita. So what an instruction. Imagine how your heart would feel. Your heart would break. Your guru says every day you have to read the whole Bhagavad Gita, and you don't know how to read. So he would sit there every day, and he would sit down and he would start to cry. And he was crying because he felt like, I can't fulfill my guru's instruction. Right? So he felt very humble. Right? But the deeper reason of why he was crying is because on the front cover of the Bhagavad Gita, what is the picture? Parthasarathi, right? Krishna is the chariot driver of Arjuna. God is Bhaktavatsala, is serving his devotee. So he was crying because he saw that Krishna himself serves his devotees. Right? Krishna is teaching us, surrender unto me, and then he surrenders to his devotee. So Prabhupada calls it the compact of love. Right? So much love between Krishna and Krishna's devotee. That's the essence of existence. There's nothing more to it, because Lord Chaitanya says the goal is prayojana, right? Is prema, Krishna praying. Every morning we say, after we say the 10 offences, we say, and then if you avoid these 10 offences, you will get. Everyone goes, Krishna praying, like that. No one thinks about what it actually means. Everyone does it, Krishna praying. It's a time we can all go, Krishna praying. Everyone gets very enthusiastic. Everyone likes to be loud and enthusiastic. But think about what it means. Right? It means that is the goal of life. How do you know when you've got Krishna praying? Right? Because tears begin to come from the eyes. Right? When you're chanting or when you see the deities, even when you take prasadam, when you see a picture of Krishna driving Arjuna on the chariot, on the front page of the Bhagavad Gita, tears come to your eyes from seeing that. That means Krishna Prema is developing. Right? So, this Brahmana, Lord Chaitanya saw him, he's reading the Bhagavad Gita every day, couldn't really read it. But he was just looking at the picture, and just by looking at the picture, tears were coming down. And Lord Chaitanya came up and he said, what stirs your emotions so much? And he said, I just see this picture and then my heart softens and I feel And he said, I feel very unworthy because I can't fulfill my guru's instruction, but still, I just see that and that just... And Lord Chaitanya said, you are the real student of the Bhagavad Gita. He said, you understand it. Not someone who reads it every day and memorizes the whole thing. You can memorize the whole Bhagavad Gita. Has anyone memorized the whole Gita? No. You should have memorized it by now, Gopa. Didn't Burujad Prabhu tell you to memorize the whole thing? How close you got? Yeah? You're doing it like that, systematically? Oh, all the way through. Okay, that's good. So, the whole Bhagavad Gita. Some devotees know the whole Gita. I've met devotees in ISKCON. They know the whole Gita, 700 verses. Right? If we know the whole Gita, the result should be tears should come from our eyes when we chant the verses. If you know the whole Gita, but the emotion is not coming, then the study is not complete. So therefore, the whole message, or the whole essence of our philosophy is to develop love of God. So Krishna says, the essence of the entire Bhagavad Gita, just surrender unto me. And when you surrender unto Krishna, Krishna surrenders to the devotee. He gives everything to the devotee. You give everything to Krishna, Krishna gives everything to you. Prabhupada says you take one step to Krishna, Krishna takes 10. 10 steps to you. Right? Prabhupada says, you got two hands, what can you take? When Krishna starts giving stuff, it's like... Because Krishna can give unlimited. He can reciprocate much more than we can. Prabhupada said he's much more eager to take us back to himself than we are to go to him. If he sees us just taking a few steps, he says, okay, come on, let's go. Right? He starts helping. And I see in my own life every day. If I surrender to Krishna, then he makes the arrangements for me. Even like yesterday, there's something I forgot. Because every day I have to do service, my service to Guru, to Krishna. And I forgot something. And I thought, oh no, I forgot it. And then by Krishna's arrangement, he covered for me. Because he says that in the Bhagavad Gita. I carry what you lack. So when I arrived and I thought, oh no, I haven't done this thing and it's not ready and all the rest of it, I got there and it was all done. Because Krishna knew and he inspired whoever it was to do it and then it's done. So he does that for us. Because he says, okay, you're trying, right? And because it's Kali Yuga, you make a lot of mistakes, but I will help you. So that is the essence. So the Bhagavad Gita is like the essence of our philosophy. And the Bhagavatam is an elaboration upon the Gita. And this chapter in particular, this chapter, the previous chapter also, in Canto 3, Kapila's teachings. This is a very famous section. This chapter has many verses which are almost identical to the Bhagavad Gita. Now, if you read the next 10 verses or so, some of the verses are almost exactly the same as in the Gita. You say, oh, that's Bhagavad Gita chapter 9, that's Bhagavad Gita. So you can see they're very similar verses. So this particular verse, this is kind of like, in one sense, it's like a key verse for our philosophy. My dear mother, a devotee who applies the science of devotional service and mystic yoga. So why does he say two things? Automatically that just creates confusion. Right? We're already some devotees confused. Some devotees are going to put their hands up at the end and say, why does he say yoga and bhakti yoga? Why doesn't he just say bhakti yoga? So why does he say both? Right? Lord Kapila is saying he's giving both because back then, when he was speaking, there was a different way of getting to God. It was called a Yuga Dharma. What's a Yuga Dharma? What's a Yuga? Yeah. Yuga means time. Just like now is Kali Yuga. So what is the Yuga? The Dharma is the religious process. What's the Yuga Dharma now? 12-hour kirtan. Prabhupada said 24-hour kirtan. In Vrindavan they have 24-hour. Goes all day, all night. And if you want to join it as your service, in the beginning they give you the night shift, just to see if you'll stay around. And if you survive, Andhra Prabhu, whenever someone came, you'd say, okay, your shift, 12 o'clock at night till 3 in the morning. Right? And if you stick around for a month, you can do that. You say, okay, now I'll start giving some day shifts. The 24-hour kirtan. That's a service. There's actually one in Harisori Prabhu's diary. Prabhupada says at one point, he was in Mayapur, I think. Prabhupada said that 500 devotees at a time should come from around the world, and everyone should come to Mayapur, and they should just sit, and they should, for 2 weeks, they should just do nothing but chant. 12-hour kirtan for 2 weeks. And then they should all leave, go back to all over the world, and then another 500 should come. He said that should just keep going on and on and on. And we haven't done that, we haven't got to that point yet in our movement. Because we're always thinking, who's going to run crossways? And, who's going to take out the bins? And, Jagannath Ballabha goes overseas and everyone like, oh my God. The whole temple starts like falling apart, it's like one devotee. What's that? Yeah, lucky we've got Prabhav. These older devotees are much more powerful, actually. You see Kali Yuga, you even see in the last 20 years how much Kali Yuga is like lessened. The potency. Jagannath's 70. Right? He does more service than all the the young devotees. Prabhav's what? He's 50 something? 53, 55, something like that. You can see he's stronger. You see this generation come now. Part of the reason is because everyone's holding mobile devices all the time. Interesting. If you buy an iPhone, right, it actually says in the instructions, it says, don't keep this device within 2 inches of your body. It actually says that. They have to say that because if you get a disease, they say, well, we told you. They have to write it. It says that. Because the radioactivity that changes the cellular structure within your body, iPads, iPhones, all the devices, I don't know what they're called anymore, all the devices, but all the devices, you're touching those things all the time. If you've got that electromagnetic current going through your body, that changes your cellular structure and depletes your energy. It takes out certain nutrients within your cells, actually. That's just a bit of advice. Because you see kids these days just walking around like all the time, like, you guys got phones yet? Or? Yeah. When you get to high school, usually it happens, right? When you get to high school, you get a phone? Do they get a phone when they get to high school? No?
I was in grade 5 and laptops in grade 7.
Okay. They carry. Let's destroy the citizens. They're actually doing it, demoniac. A lot of propaganda about these things at this point in time. They're status sponsoring deterioration of the energy of the people. And you can see, previous generations were much more powerful. People are losing their potency. Even I knew one farmer, how old is he now? He's about 70 now, 70 or 80 years now. He used to be able to push a tractor onto the back of a truck. Because back then he didn't have like machinery. And so he'd just get the tractor and push it onto the truck. Right? These days you need about 20 people to come and like pushing the. They'd say, just go and call a truck or something to grab it. No, but previously that's what people did. They're much more powerful. So Kali Yuga, everything's deteriorating. So, what was I talking about before I? The Yuga Dhamma. Very good, very good. So the Yuga Dhamma. So Prabhupada said 500 devotees would come, and they would chant, right? And then they would go back, and then another 500 would come. That is the system of religion, right? In order to purify the consciousness. So back then, when Kapila Dev was on the planet, the process was, like meditation, like a mystic yoga, Ashtanga yoga, which is like a Satya Yuga process, right? That was the Yuga Dharma, because people, that's what they could do. They could meditate for thousands upon thousands upon thousands of years. So here it is saying by bhakti yoga and by mystic yoga. But when he says mystic yoga, he means bhakti yoga. He doesn't mean, Prabhupada says this in the purport, he doesn't mean that, okay, you do mystic yoga, but then you Ashtanga yoga, but then you go off on an impersonalistic, or you have an impersonalistic goal, or you're trying to understand God impersonally. No, you must understand God as a person. That is the goal of the process. So this verse is telling us what is the goal. Prabhupada says, meditation, by meditation, one comes to the point of love of God. This is called bhakti yoga. Anyone who practices yoga must come to the point of devotional service to Krishna in his transcendental abode. That is what we're meant to do. And then Prabhupada says that if we've gone through this last chapter or so, this chapter, the previous chapters, it says you meditate on the universal form. That's a process given to the yogis. You meditate on the universal form. That's the feet, that's the legs, that's the... So you meditate like that as you meditate. Have you ever done that in your meditation? Have you ever meditated like that? Like meditate on... like the... You tried? Yeah. Like the trees are like the hairs on his body. The ocean is like the water in his navel. You meditate on all these different features. You can do that as a meditation. It's a lot easier to just chant Hare Krishna, I find, in this age, just to chant. It's a lot more effective and easy. But it's a process of meditating like that. Now, how does that process apply to bhakti yoga in our practice? Right? How do we meditate on the form of the Lord? Right? In our process, in our practice, it's very easy, it's very natural. You just come before the deity. Right? And you see, there it is, the deity. You don't have to meditate in your mind that, oh, the Lord's feet are like this and the knees are like this and like that. You just come before the deity and the deity is there. And you meditate on the Lord's lotus feet. You meditate and you slowly let your eyes rise and you drink in the Lord's form and then you meditate on his face, which is the perfection. Another way of meditating on the Lord's form is by studying Srimad Bhagavatam, because the acharyas say that the canto 1 and 2 are the lotus feet of the Lord. And if you study systematically, if you go through, what is canto 10? The face of the Lord. And it said, which part of the face is his smile? Because the smile is the most beautiful part of the face. Right? Prabhupada says, even an ugly person, when they smile, they're beautiful. It's true, actually. Right? So, which part of the 10th canto is Krishna's smile? There's 5 chapters called Rasa Panchadhyaya. Which chapters? 29 to 33. Very good. Like that. That's Rasa Leela. That's when Krishna is just with the gopis. So when Krishna is just with the gopis, he smiles. Because that's what he wants to do. He wants to run off into the forest. Right? There's no one else around, just me and the gopis. So then he's the happiest. That's God when God is happiest. He's the most blissful, just me and the gopis. Right? In private, in the whole forest, we have the whole forest to ourselves at night time. Right? So that's when Krishna becomes the most blissful. So by studying the Bhagavatam, when you systematically go through the Bhagavatam, you get to the 10th canto, that's meditating on Krishna's face. The 11th canto is the forehead. And the 12th canto is the crown of Krishna, like that. So that is the meditation. So in Bhakti Yoga, by studying the Bhagavatam, you're also meditating on the form of the Lord. Right? By doing deity worship, and that's why in Kali Yuga, it says the Yuga Dharma is Sankirtan, right? Harinam Sankirtan. You must chant the holy names of Krishna. That is the Yuga Dharma. But the acharyas say the process to get back to Krishna runs on 2 tracks. Bhagavat Vidhi Marg and Pancharatrika Vidhi Marg. Means 2 things have to be there. One is hearing and chanting about Krishna, which is the Yuga Dharma, but then the other one is Pancharatri, which means deity worship. You have to do both in Kali Yuga. This is important because most of us, you can become perfect just by chanting. You don't need to do anything else. Right? There's famous verse, Harinam, Harinam, Harinam. Kalo nastyeva, nastyeva, nastyeva. What does that mean? Translate it for us. Harinam means the holy name. The name of Hari. Harinam, Harinam, Harinam. 3 times. Prabhupada explains, if someone says something to you 3 times, they're pretty serious. Like I say to you, make sure you're there 10 a.m. on Sunday. 10 a.m. on Sunday. I didn't say it the 3rd time, but right? Make sure you're there. That's what it means. You say 3 times. Right? Sometimes you've got to do that. Get something through. Sometimes you've got to say to the kids, hey. Right? And then you've got to say it again and again, like that, and then it starts getting in there. For my daughter, you have to say it 32 times. If she's having a good day, most days it's 64. But the process is 3 times. Means it starts getting in there, right? So Harinam, 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 Eva Kevalam. Kevala. Kevala is like purity, purified. The only thing which is going to purify Kali Yuga, because Kali Yuga is a bit contaminated. Have you noticed? No, it's a bit contaminated. Yeah? Nastyeva, Nastyeva, Nastyeva. That means no other, no other, no other way. Right? Gatiya Anyata. There is no other way in Kali Yuga except for chanting. Right? So if you're advanced, you can just chant. That's all you have to do, and you can go back to Krishna. Prabhupada says in the Adi Lila of Chaitanya Charitamrita, chapter 1, I think it's in chapter 1, very, very beginning. Prabhupada said, you don't even have to have a guru. You don't even have to take diksha. That's how powerful chanting is. You can just chant the holy name. You can go back to Godhead. But hands up if you're chanting that well, or that seriously, or that perfectly. Right? None of us. Right? So therefore you have to take initiation. Right? And then what happens when you take initiation? You take vows, but you get permission to worship the deities. In ISKCON we have 2 initiations. We call it first and second. But traditionally, when Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was on the planet, there was really 1 initiation. Right? And what we call the 2, one we called Harinam and then the other one we called Brahman. That was 1 initiation. Prabhupada divided it, made it 2. He saw that fitting for the people in Kali Yuga. But traditionally, in the beginning, you would get what we call Brahman initiation, means you could worship the deity. Now, what happens when you worship the deity? Prabhupada explains that your mind and senses become purified. But when you do deity worship, the mind and senses, and especially Prabhupada mentions in his books, deity worship is for grihastas. Because grihastas are contaminated in their consciousness. Practically everyone in Kali Yuga is a grihasta. So we're contaminated in their consciousness because we're attached to material form. That's why we're in grihasta ashram. Men are attached to women, women are attached to men. That's false, that's Maya. So you have to worship the form of the deity to replace that material attachment with spiritual attachment. And when you do that, the mind, the senses become purified, and then what takes place? You can chant a lot easier. It's easier to chant for long periods of time because chanting takes effort, takes concentration, because the mind is purified. And I know that myself. I remember about 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago, I started worshipping every day a Shila, a Govardhan Shila. Right? So my Govardhan Shila is non-different from Krishna. The Shilas, just like here on the altar, we have Govardhan Shila, we have Shalagram Shila, which is non-different, and Govardhan Shila, which are Shilas or stones from the hill which Krishna lifted, Govardhan Hill. They're non-different. Govardhan Hill is non-different from Krishna. So when I started doing that puja every day, that worship every day, I noticed it became easy for me to chant. I did deity worship before that. I used to bathe, go on a few times a week. I've done deity work and artis and things like that. But I noticed when I did more deity worship, I noticed instantly. So I got that realization. So in Kali Yuga, you need both tracks. You need chanting the holy name and deity worship. So that's why we need to take initiation. That's why we need to evolve ourselves. And in Kali Yuga, that's a very high standard. Most people in Kali Yuga to chant 16 rounds a day and to worship deities, that's a high standard. You just, walk down the street, either way, Dang Street, just walk down 5 doors, either way. I don't even know who lives 5 doors either way, and just knock on their door and say, would you like to chant every day 2 hours and worship deities? That's not easy for people. I think, what are you talking about? Right? I just want to watch television and play football. Right? And you're asking me to control my mind, and it's not easy for people in Kali Yuga. It's a high standard. What we do is like a high standard. But if you can do that in Kali Yuga, Prabhupada says you will go back to Godhead. Okay, that's a very high standard for people in Kali Yuga. But if we can do that, so these 2 tracks, Pancharatrika Vidhi Marg, Bhagavad Vidhi Marg. And if you do that, then it will purify the heart, the consciousness, and then you will go back. That's the essence of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Right? The essence of the Bhagavatam is to always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. This is the process of how to do it. So the entire Bhagavatam is teaching us this one point. We have to develop Krishna Prem, love for Krishna. The Bhagavad Gita is explaining this. The Bhagavatam is elaborating upon it. There's actually quite a bit more in this purport. This purport's quite elaborate, but I'd have to speak for another half an hour or something to cover. So we'll stop there. We'll ask if there are any questions or comments what we discussed. Speak loud. Sorry.
Comment from Keshava Dasa saying that until we take further initiation through devotional services, pretty much use this until we take initiation. So,
You read a comment from Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur where he says that up until you take initiation, your devotional service is pretty much useless.
well, it says that it accounts, you cut accounts after we take initiations.
Prabhupada never says that. I don't remember any quote from Krishna Chakravarti Thakur where he says that. You'd have to show us the quote. When Prabhupada said, as I said, I quoted Prabhupada in Chaitanya Charitamrita. He says you don't even have to take initiation. If you just chant, you go back to Godhead. So there's no... Yeah, because when I joined, you hear these kind of things. Like how many strands do most devotees got around their neck? Their tulsi? Most devotees got 3, right? So there's this thing been going around since I joined. I still hear, I heard it the other day. One devotee, I said to one devotee, how come you haven't got a tulsi on, right? And then they said, I'm just going to get one round. They said, you're not allowed to wear 3 until you're initiated. Well, where does that come from? Where does it come from? Is there any Shastri reference for that? I don't know of anything like that. But when I joined, I also heard the same thing. You can't wear 3 until you get initiated. Where does that come from? Prabhupada never said it. I don't think it's written anywhere that I know of. I've never heard it. My guru never told me that. Like that. You can wear 3, you can wear 7 if you want. Just wear as many as you want. I've never heard any, you can't do this. So, but you hear these things. And when I joined, I remember devotees saying the same thing to me. When you get initiated, that's when you start advancing. But then that kind of nullifies everything you do. And Prabhupada took 11 years to get initiated. So what Prabhupada didn't make advancement for 11 years? Doesn't make sense. Right? And looking back, because devotees told me that. And when I got initiated, I definitely felt something. It's like felt like a rocket boost. I got initiated and I felt like, poof. But that only lasted a few months. So like it goes, I'm still on this rocket ship thing that's just flying through, and I'm like, whoa. I'm going to be back with Krishna in about 6 seconds. It's like, whoa. It's not like that. Initiation gives you a boost. You've got to maintain the energy. You see, a lot of devotees get initiated and then they leave Krishna consciousness. And they never practice. So it's not really anything to do with any of these things. Devotional service is all powerful. It's all potent. Initiation is very powerful. But my guru actually said to me, he said, this is the beginning, not the end. It's just the beginning. Like, initiation is just like a beginning. It just means now you're in the family. You know, when you're in the family, we give you a name. So now you're in the family. So it makes you feel part of the family. But some devotees take years to get initiated. And then the other thing is that some of the gurus won't give initiation for years. Like Burujam Prabhu, he made devotees wait 7 years, wasn't he? You guys had to wait 7 years? 10 years. So that means they didn't make any advancement for 10 years. Right? No, that's not true. They made a lot of advancement in 10 years. Right? And then when you get initiated, okay, then you feel like more. But then what about the next 10 years? Right? That's up to you how much you apply yourself. So really in devotional service, we make as much advancement. It's really, Krishna reciprocates. As you surrender unto me, I'll reward you accordingly. Right? So if you're serious, you make advancement right here, right now. You don't have to worry about those things. So Vishnu Thakur he doesn't say that unless you can show us where he says it. But I don't remember him saying anything like that. Maybe he says something around that point, but he definitely doesn't say that you're not making advancement. Initiation is necessary, but it's not like, like I got initiated years ago. It's like not like that was the pivot of my whole devotional life. In one sense it was. But I remember even when I wrote to my guru and I said to him, I want to take shelter of you, he wrote back to me and he said, the initiation is a formality. He said the real initiation is when the guru and disciple accept each other in their heart. He said just like a marriage. Like when the husband and wife accept each other in their heart, they're married. Right? And then the yajna is the formality to publicly declare we are married. So same for the guru and the disciple. The yajna is the public declaration. You are disciple, I am guru. And actually, as soon as you accept in your heart, guru, you're initiated, factually speaking. And in our tradition, a yajna is not even necessary for someone to get initiated. When Lord Chaitanya initiated Rupa and Sanatana, there was no yajna. He just gave them beads, he said that's it. And even Prabhupada, I think there are occasions where Prabhupada just did like that. Like he just gave beads and like that. Generally he would do a yajna. Because the yajna is, it's part of the tradition. But even I know devotees in ISKCON who have got initiated without a yajna. But because of circumstance, the guru couldn't do a yajna, so he just... is that okay? Yeah.
Because I wondered also what she said in the scriptures, and also Brahma said a few times, unless you get initiated with practice, you can't be considered as a Vaishnava. That's what I have heard. And there is a difference, and what you said is also right to a certain degree, because Mata Mantra can give you liberation, but I don't know whether it can give you further than that without the initiation. I just,
No, it's there. If you read Adi Leela, it's in the first chapter, Prabhupada, he clearly explains it. He says you don't even need to get initiated to go back to Godhead. He says that.
Yeah, but where is back to Godhead? Whether they consider Brahma Yogi also back to Godhead, or they really to get one of these
Prabhupada wasn't talking about Brahma Jyoti.
How to worship deity before we take second initiation?
How do you worship deity before you take initiation? Prabhupada says in the Chaitanya Charitamrita once again, he says that in Kali Yuga, you can do deity worship just by dancing and chanting in front of Gaur Nitai. That's deity worship. That's pretty easy. That's how easy it is in Kali Yuga. That's deity worship. You can just dance and chant right here. Right? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Right? That's deity worship. And you can go back to Godhead, even if you're not initiated. Seriously, you can go back to Godhead. If you were dancing and chanting in front of the deities with love, right, and you left your body at that time, you would go back to Krishna. Because prema is not controlled by anything material. Chaitanya Charitamrita says that bhakti is not dependent upon any material circumstance. So there's nothing material. There's no initiation in the spiritual world. You don't get back to the spiritual world and they say, okay, wait a minute. We have to give you your beads and your name and your job. You have to put the... It doesn't happen. You just walk in, you give them the form, suddenly you're in this spiritual form. You walk in, and they say, okay, this is your service over here. Right, start stirring the milk. Right, and you grab the pot and you say, okay. And they say, okay, keep going. Like that. And the senior devotee comes and they say, not like this. Like that. That's how it works. There's no formal initiation in the spiritual world. The devotees in the spiritual world don't sit down and have Bhagavatam class. It's not like they sit down like this and everyone's like, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. They all sit together and they just talk about Krishna. Say, where is he? We haven't seen him for hours. That's Bhagavatam class. They're just talking about Krishna continuously. Like that. So, in Kali Yuga, and you see, like the devotees, sometimes you see uninitiated devotees making garlands. I don't know what the standard is in the temple, what we have, but I've seen in some temples. Someone's not even initiated, but they're making, the Bhakta or Bhakti, they're making garlands for the deity. That's deity worship. Or, you can't cook for the deity because you're not, but you can cut the vegetables and then give that to the pujari and then he can. Or I think in the temple, you can do the fruit offering. I think if you're first initiated, you can do the fruit offering. So that's deity worship. So there's many chances. But it should inspire you to become initiated so you can get on the altar and you can, I remember when I was a young devotee, I just wanted to get second initiation. That was just focus. And my guru knew I was like that. So he gave me first initiation in 1990. I met him in 1989. Right, next year he came, he gave me first initiation. Second year he came, I was waiting for second initiation. He said, no. I said, oh, okay. It's like, he says, this is your nature. So he's slowing me down because my nature is just like, hey, what's next? So then, 91, he said next year. So he came 92, and he said no. And I was like, oh my God. It was like, what is he doing to me? And then he came in 93. And when he came in 93, the desire in my heart wasn't the same anymore. It wasn't like, my whole life depends on this. No, my desire became, if my guru wants to give it to me. So because my mood changed, and then he came and said, okay. Right? He gave me initiation. And then next day I went in on the altar and I bathed Gaurnitai. And I put my head on Lord Chaitanya's feet, Lord Nityananda's feet. I've been waiting to do that. You can put your head on their feet. You do that when you bathe? Yeah, put your head on the feet. And I remember when I touched Lord Nityananda the first time, I felt like the same as when I touched my guru's body. Same energy. Like that. And then I felt that this is spiritual energy. That's what deity worship is. It means you're touching the spiritual form of the Lord and it purifies your consciousness. Like that. So we should aspire to take initiation. And then when you do take Brahman initiation, what should you do? Worship the deities. You see, devotees take second initiation and they don't do any deity worship. That makes no sense whatsoever. My guru would say to me, after he gave me, he said, are you worshipping the deities? He'd always say that whenever he saw me, each year. He'd say, you worshipping the deities? I say, yeah. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Anything else?
Is there any concession for people who live very far away from the temple, who are new to Krishna consciousness, who want to get some more taste for chanting, but because their sense is not so good? Is there any way how they can worship the deities from far away?
They can worship a picture in their home. A picture is non-different from the deities. So they offer their food to the picture. If you can't come to the temple every day, then you have a picture of the deities in your home, and then you offer your bhoga to the deities every day. That's deity worship. So that's it. Very simple. If you're living away from the temple, and you're not initiated, or if you are initiated, you just do 3 things every day. You chant every day, you read Prabhupada's books every day, and you offer your bhoga to Krishna. That's it, and you'll become completely purified. Simple. Any other question?
You talked about further advancement, chanting is there always. But at the same time, when you're reading philosophical books, any philosophy, I'm not a reader, so I don't like reading a lot. I don't mind reading stories at all. So I always feel like demotivated. I'm not doing advancement. I'm not gonna get better because I don't get philosophical unless I hear it. So how do I get this out of my mind that because reading by myself is not like all I have to do.
I'm the same as you. I'm not a reader either. I read the first couple of years I became a devotee. I actually didn't read a lot, but every day, between 2 hours and 4 hours, I was listening to lectures. Just that's how I learn. And when I sit and give class, devotees sometimes say, "Oh, you know so much." Most of what I learned was not actually from reading, even though now I read a lot because I teach and all that. But the way I learned our philosophy was by listening to lectures. That's how I learned about our philosophy. So you can listen every day. Even now I listen probably on average about an hour a day, even though I'm in the dark well of Grihastha life. Even though I have to come to the temple, someone will throw a rope to me and pull me out. And these guys, they keep me so I don't disappear into the well. They're my saviours. But when I was a brahmachari, every day, 2 hours to 4 hours, every day for years and years, that's all I did. I just listened, lectures, like that. And just constantly just bombarding my consciousness with Krishna. And now that I'm fallen, I'm in the Grihastha ashram, then I still, at least an hour a day, I listen. And then now I read more as well. Sometimes I read about an hour a day now as well. So reading will come as you get older and your passion falls down a bit. You come old and you slow down a bit, it becomes easier to read. But when you're younger, it's true, it's hard. So just listen. Is that okay? Yeah, but every day you have to listen. Have to listen. Just make it your habit. In the morning, every day, first thing I do when I get up in the morning, I go to the bathroom, brush my teeth and everything. I turn on the lecture. I've been doing that since I became a devotee. It takes me about 40 minutes from when I get up to, when I finish dressing, putting my tilak on, because I'm quite slow. I'm very methodical. So that's 40 minutes I've already listened to every day. And then when I was a brahmachari, I used to go out on book distribution and like that. So then at lunchtime, I'd just sit down and I'd listen to a lecture while I was taking prasad, another half an hour. Like that. So. And then I'd come back and then have a bath in the evening, listen again, like that. And when I was in the car, when I was driving, when I was listening. So like I said, 2 to 4 hours every day I was just listening to lectures. So take advantage, don't waste time, that's the point. There's time there if you make it. The problem is we waste time, that's our actual problem. Any other question? Srila Prabhupada ki?